And you don't have to be brilliant to play at your full potential. Not everyone's going to be designed to work to solve world hunger, but figuring out our passions and beginning to align what we do with our purpose is the first step to getting you to start living at your utmost potential.
The right conversation can change everything. This is Mirror Talk, Soulful Conversations.
In this episode, we'll be learning more about finance, leadership, and personal growth from the Executive Director of Finance at Excellence Performance. He's a certified coach and a trained public speaker sought after for topics including communication, behavioral finance, and personal development. Welcome to the show, Mitch. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sorry you had to start off with that mouthful of stuff, but I'm doing well. Super excited to be here and excited to tune in with your audience and share a little bit about my story and hopefully leave everyone with a nugget or two they can take away.
Yes, I'm super excited to be speaking with you today, and I'm looking forward to learning so much from you because you are a public speaker and a certified coach, and you cover a lot of areas of fields that I'm very, very interested in. So I'll just love us to first start from the beginning, from you yourself, from your own personal journey of growth. Like, can you share your story with us? And I also got to know that you have a background. You come from immigrant parents who came to the US. Can you also tell us how that influenced your life and made you who you are today?
That's a great question. Absolutely. Whenever anyone asks me, tell me about yourself, I always start with my parents immigrating to this country because it really is the core fundamental of who I am today. When they immigrated to the United States, it's that they really came here with nothing. They had about $20 a week to live off of between three people. And it was their work ethic, their dedication, and their very super clear goal of wanting to offer more for my brother and I, for our family, that drove them. And so growing up, I was very blessed and privileged to be in a household where family was a priority. We were very family oriented, but also work ethic and discipline was ingrained into everything that we did. There was no entitlement. There was no enablement because everything my parents did, they worked diligently for. And so that I carry through, in a lot of where my work ethic comes from is from them. And same thing with my perspective and my gratitude for my current station in life. But it also came with a little bit of pressure, everything that they'd done, I felt a bit of pressure to make them proud and to make them feel like it paid off. And so I went to school and I got a degree in accounting from the number 2 accounting school in the country in the United States. And I got a degree in finance as well. Not your natural accountant, not your natural finance guy by any stretch. And it was actually me doing a pathway and following a study that was so opposite from my personality style that actually led me to personal development, because I didn't, quite frankly, want to only do accounting. And so that opened the door for me to start learning about personal development. I actually started selling nutritional supplements while I was getting my college degrees because I had a passion for health and nutrition, but I needed to figure out how can I do things that I enjoy as I'm studying these very technical skills. And so that opened the door to rejection. It opened the door to learning how to be vulnerable because I was entering a sales role. And that is where I began doing personal development, attending seminars, attending conferences, up until discovering how speaking and coaching really is my passion and purpose. And from there, really seeking out the best mentors and figuring out a way to create value exchange so that they would mentor me and show me how to become a speaker and a award-winning or work for an award-winning coaching company.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's so great. Like, you're not just an accountant, but also a public speaker, a certified coach, combined, you have various aspects of life that you are, certified in and an expert in. That's awesome. Well, can you give us like a background into how it feels like, at the backstage behind the curtain? How is it like for you to, go to school to study accounting and also afterwards, sell supplements and at the same time trying to become a coach and also a public speaker? How is all of that for you behind the curtains? What was the pressure like? What was the task like? What was the sacrifice like to achieve all of this?
Yeah. And so, even to add on that too, beyond the sacrifice too, it sounds like I was juggling a lot of different things. And, that's sometimes a lot of people in this generation too. We're like, I got to try this. I got to try this. I got to try this. And we end up juggling all these things because it's exciting. It's new. And we almost, in our culture, we applaud people who can do so much. And so, but the challenge with that is that when we do a lot, we end up becoming an expert of very little. And when we focus on a variety of tasks, it diminishes our momentum to really build on our goals and our focus. And so a lot of times, I was juggling those different things because I was in a searching mode. And so sometimes there's that distinguishment that I like to make is you don't necessarily get to success by doing a bunch of things one at a time. And so that's while I was in that searching season, it was a lot of balls in the air. I was juggling. So time management became critical. I was listening to audiobooks on time management, and later on had a time management coach for a season through our company so that I could learn on how do I become not just busy, which everyone seems to be, but effective and productive. The old adage, work smarter, not harder. And so I really took that to light to taking different time management concepts. One of them was a huge one that my time management coach taught me was power hours. I would block out an hour in my calendar for a specific type of task, put the phone away, and that would be the only thing that I focus on for that hour. So whether it was studying for accounting, whether it was reaching out to people for sales, maybe even exercising, I would just tune the whole world out and focus on one thing at a time. And that allowed me to maximize my efficiency more than I even understood until I reflect back and see the different things that had been accomplished.
That's good. That's a very wonderful skill to but that requires a lot of discipline, I believe. Putting the phone away or turning it off or putting on airplane mode, for example, for specific amount of hours. That could be a very big challenge for a lot of us.
Yeah. And so that sometimes was the challenge. So having a lot of times accountability, I had accountability mentors and accountability coaches because there was some stuff I wanted to do and I had no issue putting the phone away. But there are other things like sometimes reaching out to people when I was in a sales type role. That was not exciting because I was nervous. I was afraid in the beginning about rejection. Now I kind of look forward to it. I like talking to strangers. But before, and so I had coaches that literally held me accountable to do my power hours. And if I didn't hit them, my penalty would be $100 charged on my credit card.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah. And so it made the task that seemed daunting that I want to procrastinate on, well, it was way easier than spending $100 by not doing it. And so that allowed me to stick it, because a lot of times we kind of take it lone wolf about pursuing our goals. We go at it alone. We say, it's up to me. I'm going to do it. But we're limited by our own capacity because we're not always at our A game. So having that external accountability, having that coach, that mentor, that's what allowed me to, even when I wasn't up for it, because I quite frankly wasn't all the time, I had that discipline ingrained through that accountability and those check-ins with my coaches and mentors.
Yeah. I mean, it's very important for us to have someone that we're accountable to, someone that's, also responsible for, or someone that, makes us feel responsible for whatever we are doing. Yeah. I really love that. Yeah. And, you talked about you having that fear or being afraid, when you're in the sales activities, basically, like when you have to call strangers or, make communication out to people. That motivates me to want to ask you, like, in this journey so far, like, from where you started to now that have you experienced some kinds of fear, and how were you able to overcome all of these fears on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I moved halfway across the country to start working with Excellence Performance, and I was given a position to start and develop the finance department for this coaching and speaking company. And I was fresh out of college. I moved halfway across the country and quite frankly did not have the experience or the skill set to do what I was doing. So I was horrified because there were going to be people that were depending on me for accounting and financial guidance. I was living alone. I was learning how to become an adult, learning how to be a man, live by myself, do all these things, balance all these things. And so there was a lot of different fears. What if I fail at it? What if I mess up with the client? What if the whole thing blows up and I have to move back home with my tail between my legs? What if it turns out that I'm not good enough? There's all these things that circulate. And so when it came to overcoming my fear, we teach in our seminars this concept that fear always exists. So whether you're not pursuing your goals, your passions, or you are, fear is there. You can either be afraid, you can either not act and have fear holding you back from moving, or you can act and be afraid while you're acting. And so when I had the awareness that whether I pursue my dreams or I don't, fear is going to be a part of the equation. It never just goes away. It's always a factor at varying degrees. And so I looked at that and said, okay, if fear is going to be part of every aspect of me pursuing my goals and developing myself, how do I use fear and not be used by it? How do I shift my perspective from fear and use it to propel me, as opposed to many of us feel like we're locked in and chained? And so that's where I began focusing on. And instead of focusing on the fears behind why I wouldn't be good enough or why I wouldn't mess up, I focused on the fears of, well, what if I didn't make this work? What if I didn't actually pursue this goal? What if I didn't give it my whole 100%? Because for me, the fear of not living my passion or the fear of living with regret outweighed the fear of me making a mistake or looking silly.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I looked at, if fear is going to be a part of the equation, it's a part of life. What fear am I going to focus on that can actually motivate me to do better, as opposed to the irrelevant fears that all they do is hinder? And that was my perspective around fear.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, one has to like weigh them together and say, okay, do I want to regret not taking this action, or do I just want to, head in and see how it's, how it goes or where it leads me to, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about when you're dating or you're afraid to ask that girl or guy out on a date, and I've met so many people. I even coach. I have young professional clients that I coach on the relationship piece. And the reason I'm qualified is, if you have the privilege to meet my amazing wife, you'd realize how good I can actually sell. And so I work on this aspect, but it's the same thing. If you don't ask that person out on a date, you don't ask them for coffee or go get lunch, are you more afraid of saying no, getting told no, or afraid that you didn't ask out the person that could be the one and the one you want to spend the rest of your life with?
You're afraid that you miss out on that opportunity, basically. Yeah.
I'm like, that's horrifying to me. So I'm going to build up the courage, because I don't want to be crippled and stay back and not be able to ask that person out who could be the one I want to spend the rest of my life with, because of that fear. It's that same thing. The fear of if it's going to happen, or the fear if it won't happen. And a lot of times the fear of our goals not happening, when we focus on that, will actually help us begin to act.
Yes. Oh, that's very smart. Yeah, I love that. But one of the fears that we do have is, the fear of failure. Like, that's if I go and ask that girl out, or that guy out, for example, I might fail and she might say no to me, and I'll feel like a fool and feel, less than I am before I ask her out. So can you share your experience with failure, and what were you able to learn from the failures that you've experienced in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I shared a lot of this, and a lot of coaching is shifting and aligning perspective. And I was working with this with a client a month or two ago, and he does marketing for a company. He handles all the marketing for his team. And there was a fear component, because he was afraid to think outside the box or kind of test the boundaries in the realm of marketing, whether it was posting on LinkedIn or engaging and doing different types of campaigns. And because he was afraid of messing up and afraid of that failure piece. And so one of those perception shifts, just like fear is always part of the equation, understanding that failure is not an option when it comes to success. It's actually part of the journey. The fastest way we can get to our goals is to fail, learn from them, and move on. There's not a whole lot of learning and growth that happens from winning. A lot more, because nobody asks the question. Tobi, you don't ask your podcast host, tell me about a time that you succeeded, or how you just won first place and what you learned from that experience. No. When did you fail and how did that help you? And so if we can get to our goals, the only way we do it is by learning and getting better. Failure is what teaches that to us. Failure is the guiding guiding pathway through it. And so for me, I embrace failure to the best that I can, because it's not fun, it's not easy, but I understand that failure is going to be something that I need to have as an occurrence in my day-to-day, in my journey as I proceed towards my goals, because if it's not, I'm not learning and I'm not growing. And so, I remember there were times where when I was first learning how to speak, and we were having a seminar, and I was going up for a talk. And while I was talking, all of a sudden, I was forgetting the words that I needed to say. I was forgetting the topic. It was kind of like, oh my gosh. And the challenge was, the more I was thinking about it, nothing was coming to mind. And I was starting to look at my notes more frequently. I was starting to have verbal fillers. And I walked away, and it was a finance talk. And I walked away really, from my standpoint, feeling like I executed that talk at 50%. I felt like I didn't live it to my potential. I made an oops, right? And really, it wasn't at my full A game. And so that learning experience, the thing that I looked at, and I sat down with my boss and my coach. Interesting when they're both your boss and your coach, and it should be that way. And so we looked at what happened. Why did that occur? And I was looking at the things. My prep was the same. Everything in my routine was the same, except I ate the catered in lunch and prior to speaking. And so what I'd learned is there's certain foods that cause more brain fog for me and more sensitivity, to where when I go up speaking after certain meals, I'm not able to be as sharp and I can't remember everything as clearly. And when I'm going up on stage, or when I'm going to go speak, I've got to be crystal clear in my mind. And so that was one of the failures that I experienced. Is I gave in what I would call an inadequate talk, but because of that, it allowed me to have awareness on how important my diet is in my pre-speaking routine and prep, that allows me to be sharp and crystal clear every time moving forward from those talks.
And that makes a lot of sense. And from that experience of yours, then you know what to eat before you have a speaking engagement.
Yeah.
And it just made me remember what we were talking about before we started recording, about all part of our lives being connected to each other. Basically, we knew that diet is connected to the way I perform on stage, or the way you perform on stage, basically. But it's all related. And having expressing this failure or a lesson in disguise, then you're able to become better. You're able to improve in the way you carry out activities, or what you do, or even in the choices that you make basically in life. I mean, when relating this to other parts of our lives too.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
Yeah. So I mean, I would love to learn from you. You set goals, you achieve your goals. You set visions, you achieve everything you set your mind to do. Can you tell us how we can effectively pursue our goals and not be busy being busy, basically, like you talked earlier?
Yeah. So the goals that I set in a year, I probably only reach about 30 to 40% of them. So I fail on hitting my goals pretty much every single year, but I hit a third of them on average. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that I'm setting goals large enough that stretch me, that push me, that challenge me in order to live a life greater than I can imagine in how I can do it right off the bat. See, if we reach and hit all of our goals right off the bat, then we're playing a small game, flat out. If my client comes to me and they're looking about hiring me as a coach, and they say, Mitch, I'm awesome. I hit every single goal that I set out for. I say, congratulations, you're living at far from your full potential. You failed. Goals are not something we're supposed to hit 100% of the time, all the time in the time frame you set, because if we are, there's no room to stretch. There's no room for us to develop and grow to achieve them. And so when I look at setting goals, and I want to actually make sure that I'm focused on them, and that I'm not just going to be busy and really filling up time, but I'm really intentional about pursuing after my goals. I'm really intentional about it. What I do is I look at, why do I need this? What's the importance behind it? One of my favorite examples that the owner of Excellence Performance, Tony, uses when he speaks is whenever somebody says, you know what, I love $1 million. That's my goal, to have $1 million. His next response is, great, I'll give it to you. I'll take $1 million and I'm going to put it in a glass case. And I'm going to take that case, I'm going to drill it into a wall, and it's impenetrable. You can't unscrew it. You can't touch it. All you can do is look at it. You got your $1 million. Are you satisfied? You go, no. Okay. Well, you said you wanted $1 million, so here it is. Well, no, I wanted to spend the $1 million. Okay. Well, what do you want to spend it on? And then I've had clients that they say, well, I'd like to buy a house. I'd like to get a new car for my parents, and I want to travel. I'm like, great. So that's like $600,000-$700,000. What are you going to do with the other 300? Like, they didn't even have in their minds what they're going to do with the money and why it's important. When you have goals that are faulty or just sound nice or look nice, we're not going to end up hitting them intentionally because there is no white hot burning desire to actually pursue them. A lot of times in personal development, we talk about the why behind goals. Why do you have to have it? Why is it important? For me, that's a little hard to quantify. Like, that's tough to say, well, why is it important? Not. So from my perspective, I look at it as a little more tangibly. I like to sleep. I sleep about 8-9 hours a day. It's I got to hit it to stay effective. So I say, okay, so for me, if I'm going to get up at 4 a.m, every day, what is going to be the goal so important that I'm willing to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, nonstop, 7 days a week, because it's so critical? I'm willing to wake up to hit this. That's how I know I've got my white hot burning desire. You know, if my wife and I, when we have kids and we want to send them to the top school in the area, that's something important for me to hit a financial goal. And I'll wake up at 4 a.m. every single day and make that happen. So that's how, when I to answer your question, how do I make sure I set my goals and actually pursue them? I look at the why, and I know the why is strong enough by quantifying am I willing to get up every single morning super early to pursue this and to hit this nonstop every day? And if the answer is 100% yes, then I know my why is strong enough.
With that, so yeah, I really love that. I love the fact that you say you set a lot of goals for yourself. Maybe you achieve 1/3 of it, but that's where you're able to stretch yourself every time. Yeah, that's so wonderful. Like, what mistakes do you think everyone should avoid when setting goals at the beginning of the year or beginning of the month? When I sit down to set goals for the month or for the week, for example, what are some things I should look out for, and what are the things I should avoid, basically?
Yeah. So right off the bat, they did a study, and I can't remember which university did the study, but they found that the people who had goals relative to the ones that didn't were 10 times as likely to achieve success in hitting those marks. So just from goals to no goals, you're 10 times more likely. Now, if you write down those goals, they found that you're 3 times more likely to hit them than the group that had goals. So you're 30 times more likely to hit your goals and hit your marks by writing down goals relative to the people that don't have goals whatsoever, or hitting your idea of success. So mistake number 1, that right off the bat, don't just talk about your goals, write them down. There's something to be said about taking something in the ethereal that's in your mind and actually putting concrete on paper and having it stare back at you when you look at it. Super simple. Write your goals down. The mistake to avoid is most people write their goals down and then they put them in a drawer, they put them in a bin, a folder, and they forget about them. They never look back. It's critical to actually go back and take a look at your goals. See what you wrote down, see what you accomplished, see what you didn't, but actually have the time to see how you've progressed. Because a lot of people listen to your show, they're not I'm lazy, I'll do whatever I feel like it. They're the go typically. Otherwise, why are they sitting on the show? I mean, I think you've got a great podcast, but quite frankly, if I'm lazy, I'm going to be sitting on the couch and watching TV, eating popcorn and pizza if I don't want to do anything, not listening to motivational personal growth podcasts. So I'm gauging that the people that are listening to your audience are wanting to develop themselves and grow. So when we take that approach, oftentimes we don't take a moment to look back at the goals we've already accomplished. We're already setting new ones and setting new ones and setting new ones. So we don't have a gauge on how are we improving? What's the progression look like? What's the pat on the back, the feel good, the affirmation that you've accomplished the goals you've set out for? And then using that as fuel to propel you towards your next set of goals.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mitch, for sharing that. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, we have to put everything down on paper and, always go back to them and look at it. Okay, how far have you gone? What have you set? What have you, set as your intentions for this week, basically? Yeah. Just keep chasing after them. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or is this part of what we have to do in order to discover our innermost potential? Like earlier, you talked about potential also. Like when you talk about, the goals, if you achieve all your goals all the time, you're not reaching your full potential, basically. So what else can we do in order to discover our innermost potential, and how can we align it with our passion, with our purpose, with our visions?
Yeah. That's a great question, Toby. And I believe your potential will continue to elevate. And that's one of the things that I focus on. My passion, my purpose is helping young professionals, up and coming leaders step into their full potential. And the way to really do that, from my understanding and from my personal experience too, is first gaining awareness of your passion and of your purpose. See, because if you're doing something just because you're good at it or just because it makes you money, there's not going to be that underlining fuel or fire that's going to make you challenge and make yourself want to succeed and excel and grow. So I had a client a year or two ago who absolutely brilliant. I mean, his IQ was probably 150, 160, went to a top university for engineering, for physics, absolutely brilliant individual. And he worked for a computer coding company and then decided he wanted to travel across the country to learn and discover new things because he was kind of in that searching and that wandering mode. And so here was an individual who was absolutely brilliant, but didn't really have an outlet to apply himself to the fullest. He was good at the company he worked for, but he wasn't as most optimal. He wanted to go travel around. He had some fun experiences, but he really wasn't. There was no desire there that made him excel to his utmost potential. And so when he hired me as a coach, we worked through discovering his passion and his purpose. And the thing with discovering your purpose, especially, is it's not something that just falls in your lap. It's discovered over time, and it's a lot of trial and error. For some, it might they'll find it and that's that. But for a lot of people, it's trying different things. It's building an alignment of this seems like it, so I'm going to develop from here and then moving towards that. And then the next thing and the next after that. And so with him, we discovered he had a tremendous passion around food hunger, basically distribution of food in the United States and even in the world, on how we don't have certain sustainable agriculture and how there's a distribution challenge and an issue. And so first off, what we had to work on was developing his self-worth and his confidence that he needs to start thinking at a greater scale and really identify and understand the magnitude of his capabilities. So once we broadened his self-worth and what he could accomplish, he started wanting to go after something like world hunger and sustainable agriculture, which was his passion. So a year after coaching, we checked in, and this person was working at two different startups, working at this season in his life, very long hours, but learning different things at a radical pace, working with a variety of team members, developing things that have the potential to really change the world. And he was doing all of these things. And what I would say is, for the first time in his life, living at his utmost potential, because he developed his self-worth enough to identify what can he be capable of solving, what can he be capable of contributing to, overcoming the fears, and then starting to align his passion with what he was doing. And all of a sudden, his work ethic improved, his ability to learn, his risk tolerance, all these different things. He started approaching life at a different scale. And you don't have to be brilliant to play at your full potential. Not everyone's going to be designed to work to solve world hunger. But figuring out our passions and beginning to align what we do with our purpose is the first step to getting you to start living at your utmost potential.
Yes, that's very true. That's very, very true. And one thing that I love that you mentioned is like sometimes we don't eat it at once. We have this try and error, and that could be very challenging. Like it could be very difficult sometimes because I always have this before this feeling that, oh, okay, if I do try it once and I fail, maybe it's not for me. But then I was totally wrong because when you try the second time or maybe the third time, it clicks and it works. I'm like, wow, this is actually for me. But yeah, if I stay persistent with it, then I could become successful with it and also discover even greater things that I never knew I could do actually. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And a lot of it too is it's about starting something and then committing to it. See, because a lot of young professionals will go, this isn't it. So I'm going to jump and try something different. Well, this isn't it. Well, I'm going to jump and try something different. They don't give it the time to whatever that next station is, commit to it. Give it 3 to 5 years at least. Learn as much as you can. Develop the network. Learn the skill set and actually take this next experience and utilize it to be able to build off of it for what's next.
Yeah.
See, I see too many times, time and time again, there's this hop every 6 months, year, 2 years. I'm going to try this. Okay, then I'm going to do this. Okay, then I'm going to do this. But there's no momentum that's built. There's no true learning and development that occurs because we're kind of back to this. I'm just going to juggle a bunch of balls in the air, but I'm not actually testing the time, putting the time in to really commit and utilize this experience at its fullest before I start the next season or the next stage.
Yes. Yeah. Everything is in season and stages and phases basically in life. Yeah. Yeah. And when preparing for this conversation, I read that you developed a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And I really want to learn from this because, like you just said now, you said everything's in season, phases, everything has its it's stage basically. And some of these early stage could be very, very difficult. We could experience some failure, we could have to overcome some fears. How do we still develop a sense of gratitude and appreciation even in these very, very difficult and challenging phases of life?
Yeah, so for gratitude is something that I work to start and end my day with. So first thing I do as soon as I wake up in the morning, I thank God for this day. I'm grateful to be alive, for the opportunity. And then from there, I think through. Some people write it down. For me, my morning routine, I think about it more so. And depending on what behavior you're trying to learn, I may recommend to write it. I may recommend just thinking. And so for myself, I start and end every day thinking through what I'm grateful for. Typically the second thing I turn and I'm so grateful for my wife. And then I think through and I'm grateful for different clients, work. And sometimes it's just as simple as the food in my fridge or the transportation that I have. And I think a lot of times, especially when we're going through tough seasons, perspective is so key when it comes to maintaining gratitude. Because depending on what you're doing and depending on the life that you have and what you're pursuing, a lot of times I have yet to meet an individual who can't find something to be grateful for based on their perspective. There's different places around the world where shelter in a home looks like 100 square feet shared with a couple people. And, it may not be 100, but for some it actually might be. And some shelter looks very different. It's tents. It's not even buildings and structures. And so a lot of times what I look at is finding areas around the world and having different conversations to identify truly shift my perspective to what my life looks like and where I am at and what there is that I can and should be grateful for. And so especially during those tougher seasons, we sometimes get so siloed in and focusing on our problems or focusing on our fears that we take for granted or we miss the reality of our current situation, how good it actually is. And, especially, and I find certain things, what my boss and my mentor, he's been up and down through building businesses. He lost his businesses due to health challenges with diabetes, and then he rebuilt it back up. And he talks about this 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or another analogy is you're climbing up the mountain. See, because the thing is, most people, when they're pursuing their goals, it's not a straight ascend up to your goals. It's up, down, up, down, up, down. And he talks about when he lost everything, he was almost as low as it could possibly go. but he was still better off than he was 10 years ago because of everything that he'd learned. And he was able to use that to build up his wealth again. And then when there was a challenge with the business or something would happen, it took a dip, but that dip was still better off than the previous dip. And that perspective, that gratitude on where you're at in your current station in life relative to before, relative to other places around the world, is what allows you to sustain it and sustain going through the valleys, which are natural, until you get into those peaks again and get into those highs and get into those winning and accomplishing your goals.
Wow, those are deep words, Mitch. Those are very wonderful lessons, actually. Yeah, like being in the present helps us to be much more grateful. Like, okay, I know I'm not where I'm meant to be, but where I am right now is due to the fact that I've learned a lot in the past, and that's why I'm here. I'm grateful for the mistakes. I'm grateful for the failure, and all of these things have made me who I am today. That's awesome. I still want to learn from you because you you have a lot of things that one could learn from. Basically, I would love you also to talk about excellence performance very soon, but I'd love you to just like enlighten me on how to become a better leader in my personal life and in my professional life. How can I show become a better person in achieving my goals and also being there, leading my own life and leading my career too.
One of the things that I admire the most about different leaders that I follow, both from learning in books and watching speak or in my day-to-day in my relationships, leaders that I look up to, is I see this common thread of extreme humility. This humble approach to, despite all the successes that they've had, their capacity of leaders, they still take this humility of always wanting to learn, taking time and being present with people. There's this amazing approach that they have. And I'm thinking of one of my close friends and mentors. He coaches probably, I think, 40 to 50 CEOs. So 40 to 50 CEOs of different businesses look to him for coaching. And so he is very well networked, very well known in the community here. And a lot of people lean on him and guidance. But if you were just to talk to this individual, if you were just to go up to him, you honestly could not tell the position that he is in or the resources that he has based on the genuineness that he takes, that he approaches when he talks to you. You can see he's fully attent, he's fully listening, he's fully present. He doesn't, there's minimal ego that's inflated. And honestly, if I told him that, he would brush it off because he's embraced this sense of humility. And I think one of the staples as we develop as leaders, as myself, in addition, Tobi, is looking at how do we sustain a level of humility in our day-to-day that puts ourselves in a position to learn, puts ourselves in a position to accept other people's advice, to take a look at their perspective, because it's as we develop, that is a dangerous piece, because the more success we have, whether it's in our families, in our careers, or financially, ego can start to come into the picture. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at everything that I've done. Look at who I am, what I know. And I begins to come into the equation, and humility begins to diminish. And with that follows short-sightedness, unnecessary mistakes, a lot of things that can become detrimental. And so for me personally, in my journey, as I focus on developing and becoming a better leader and a greater leader, my recommendation whenever asked this question is to make humility one of the top priorities and to consistently focus on that so that we can always be in a state of being open to new advice, new counsel, being open to different perspectives, and to find new ways to challenge ourselves to grow, to exceed, and cause impact at a greater scale.
Yeah, that's a very important lesson. Be humble, humility, yeah, and being open-minded. Yes, yeah, that's good. And can we also relate this to our finance, for our financial strategies and goals? Are we supposed also to be open-minded and be humble when it comes to have that humility when it comes to planning or making strategies for our finance?
For finance, yeah, because and it's a great point, because a lot of us, there's two things that happen. I'm going to either try to do it all on my own, or it's too complicated, so I'm going to brush it off and just give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And when it comes to finance, I believe finance truly taught well is simple. The principles to actually excel in building wealth are not complicated in nature. Saving your first 10%, don't not buying frivolously on things that really create no value in your life. These concepts aren't hard. When it comes to specific investment strategies and all these different aspects, that can get complicated, but that isn't the majority of becoming successful with finances. The majority of becoming successful with your finances is having awareness and being in control over where your money's going in and out. And so when it comes to the humility approach, it's critical to have people that you trust that know what they're talking about in different realms of finance to be brought in to your financial equation. Just like you wouldn't try to run a large business by yourself, don't try to run your finances by yourself. Even though I can do it and know how to do it, I have a person who handles my investments in the market. I have an individual that handles the accounting and the tax returns for my individual and some of my business stuff. I have counsel and check-ins with 2 different coaches and mentors around my financial investment strategy. And I coach and consult people on investment strategy.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at it, this is my degrees, this is what I'm working, I'm still have people mentoring and getting their ideas. It's critical that we find people that we can trust. And when we do that, our role, we need to be empowered to learn how to vet people. A lot of times when I'm working with individuals, I coach and train them when it's finance specific on what are the questions you ask to make sure your accountant is the right account for you. What are the questions you ask your financial advisor to make sure that they're right for you, so that just because they have a license or a title, you don't trust them explicitly and implicitly, you just don't give them everything. You know actually how to vet them out, and then you bring them in to your finance team.
Yes. So it's very important for us to have people or experts like coaches also who help us, in organizing our finance, helping us ensure that our financial goals or strategies are actually possible to achieve and make them simple for us to learn. And also, I love the fact that you mentioned that, we are supposed to also learn those skills, or things, to know, okay, this is the right person for me, and be able to vet the right coaches for us, basically for our vision. And yes. I'd love to learn more about excellence performance. Like, can you tell us what you do, the services that you offer, and how we could profit from excellence performance?
Absolutely. Excellence Performance. We're an award-winning consultant coaching and training company. So we have a team of different coaches with their own specialties on helping developing people, whether it's individually or within businesses. So sometimes we'll have people that are looking for how do I find my purpose? How do I start living at my utmost potential? They feel like there's more there. They'll come work with me on doing personal growth and development coaching. Sometimes there's individuals with small businesses. They've got a startup, they have a small team, and they want to figure out, how do I grow my business or make it more profitable? How do I manage all the time? I mentioned the time management coach. And how do I actually go about running and leading my business successfully? And then sometimes we have larger corporations that hire us to do corporate training, team events, and motivational and keynote speaking. And so really our philosophy and our premise is developing people, whether it's individually in small business or large corporation, to live at their utmost potential, grow as leaders, grow as communicators, and to continuously develop themselves so that they can cause a positive ripple effect.
That's good. Yeah. And what's the best way to, get across to you, apply for get to know more about excellence performance also?
Best way, honestly, is we've got a website that we just redid. It looks awesome. So check in our website, and I am very active on my LinkedIn. So I almost never turn down somebody. I'll send out my calendar link. If you want to hop on a 15-minute phone call, talk about, here's what I'm struggling with, here's what I'm thinking about, contacting me through LinkedIn's the best way to talk and see if there's a mutually beneficial opportunity for our team to help and get you towards your goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's so much one could learn from you personally, Mitch, and I can imagine there are so much more one could also get from getting across to excellence performance. There are a lot of coaches on board. A number of them. I don't know the exact amount of coaches you have in excellence performance, but I was going through your beautiful website and I saw that there are a lot of people that one could really learn from and become a better person by assessing you basically also. Yeah. Yes.
And we work with people locally. We also have a lot of clients across the country. We've had clients across the globe. I don't think we have any right now outside the United States, but we definitely have before. So we work both in person and virtual across the country.
Awesome. Great. So, Mitch, if there's something you would like to share with us as a closing remark, what would that be? Like, what advice we would like to give someone out there? What can we do to make the world a better place or make ourselves a much better person?
I would say if I can leave you with one thing, it's that knowledge is potential power. Knowledge in itself, listening to podcasts, reading books, it's all phenomenal, but it means nothing until actually acted upon. So my challenge is, if there is something from this talk today, this podcast, a nugget, and I work to create some broader ideas, but also some really simple, tangible things, whether it was writing goals, checking back on your goals, power hours. If there's something that resonated, my challenge and my takeaway for you all is act on at least one thing. Implement it as soon as you get off this call, as soon as you finish listening, you pull up at your desk, you're at home, wherever it is. Take one thing and put it into your routine and act on it. Because the world's not going to change by more podcasts. The world's not going to change by you listening to more books. The world's going to change by you taking the information from people like Tobi who are pouring it out and using it and actually acting on it. So that happens with one simple action that's applied numerous times consistently until you develop yourself and the people you work with and work alongside begin to develop themselves, and you finally begin to see this positive ripple effect and this positive impact create.
Yes, that's so tangible and valid. Thank you so much, Mitch. I really appreciate this conversation. I've learned so much. I'm going to learn to apply writing down my goals again. I did that in the past break, but I'm going to resume back on that. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate this wonderful conversation. It was wonderful.
It's been a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you, Tobi.
Thank you.
If this conversation resonated with you, consider following or subscribing to Mirror Talk on your favorite podcast platform. You can also support the show by sharing this episode with someone who might need it and by leaving a 5-star rating. It helps these conversations reach more people who could benefit from them.
Thank you very much.